Saddened that we stand here today to announce that the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery is now officially a homicide investigation.
To Crystal Sorey and Adam Montgomery, the two parents had a rough upbringing. They're both products of the child welfare system. And in fact, Adam was incarcerated when Harmony was born. And it was right around this time that Crystal Sorey was also struggling with substance abuse.
Four was that there was a massive breakdown of communication, that she was somewhere, wires were crossed, maybe one state wasn't talking to the other state, maybe dad had handed Harmony off to a friend, to another relative.
Did you believe she was still alive?
I did.
Your daughter had some injuries
What?
that you know about when you lived on Guilford Street.
No, I do not. What are you referring to?
Well, you were there, I wasn't, right?
What are you referring to?
I'm referring to her having some good marks.
What are you referring to?
Marks that were left on her by you.
Absolutely not. I have nothing else to say.
Like,
No.
we talked about how we were worried about your daughter the other day, right?
Okay.
You remember that conversation?
I remember that conversation, but right off the rip, but the way you're approaching the conversation, you guys are completely out of line. So,
Me?
yeah.
Do I? In the time that you've known me, which
What
is...
you just said to me, you guys are completely out of line.
Okay, but so explain to me, how are we out of line?
I have nothing to explain.
Okay, but wouldn't you rather explain it so we can make sense of it than just have other people's side of the story? Like, you want to defend yourself and like this picture people are painting of you? Now's your chance, man. Defend
Whose side of the story? Who's telling you these things?
people that were close to you.
Obviously not.
Well,
However, her work records contradicted her testimony, exposing her lie.
Kayla, why are you currently incarcerated?
For perjury, for lying to the jury about the whereabouts of where I was and where Harmony was.
And when you say lying to the jury, was that the grand jury?
Yes.
Did you also lie to the police?
Yes.
Why'd you do that?
Because I was scared, and I was told by Adam to stick with that story, that I got dropped off at work at Dunkin' Donuts, where I no longer worked at that time, and to say that he was bringing Harmony to meet her mother, Crystal, and that he dropped her off with her. And then when he came to pick me up from work, which I was not working there at the time, he didn't have her in the car, which that was a lie.
That story that you just told, that was what you told the grand jury?
Yes.
It's what you told the police?
Yes.
And was that in fact what happened?
No.
You said you've been sentenced for lying.
Yes.
You're living at the prison. Do you understand the consequences of providing false testimony?
Yes.
And since those lies, since your time in prison, have you sat down with investigators? Have you sat down with the Attorney General's office and provided additional statements?
Yes.
How many times?
About 4 times.
How many hours?
A couple hours at a time when they've came to see me, or I've gone out to the office to meet with them.
Arrested for perjury, Kayla, facing her own legal consequences, finally agreed to tell the full, horrifying story.
When you got home, did you see Harmony there?
I did.
Where did you see her?
I seen her standing in the kitchen.
And when you saw her in the kitchen, how did she look to you?
She had a black eye.
Can you describe it for us? How did the black eye look?
Full, like a raccoon's eye, black and blue.
Black and blue?
Yes.
And when you say full, what do you mean by full? Can you give us a good
All the
example?
way around.
All the way around. And I see just there you were pointing to your right eye. Did you see it on her right eye?
I honestly can't recall, but I think the left.
Okay, you think the left. Okay. I appreciate that for your honesty there. You said you saw her in the kitchen with this black eye?
Yes.
Okay.
Harmony with a severe bruise around her eye. When confronted, Adam's chilling admission to Kevin, "I bashed her around the house."
So when you saw her in the kitchen with this black eye, what, if anything, did you say? It's okay, take your time.
Something along the words of, "Oh my fucking God, what did you do, Harmony?"
And who answered that question?
My nephew Adam,
Where was he?
standing right behind her.
And what did Adam say?
She didn't do anything. I bashed her around the fucking house.
Did Harmony ever say anything in response to the question, or just Adam saying, "I bashed her around the fucking house"?
I think just Adam.
How did Adam say this?
How did he say it?
Yes. Well, let's put it this way. Can you say it the way that he said it, so that we understand?
I'm not sure. If I had to describe it, to the best of my ability, would be like a cocky son of a bitch.
Did Adam tell you why he bashed her around the house and caused the black eye?
He did.
What did he say?
He said he was in the bathroom moving his bowels, and that he put Harmony in charge to watch Declan, and when he came out, Harmony had her hands over his mouth, and I guess his lips were supposedly below. That's what was explained.
That's what Adam explained to you?
Correct.
And after he explained that, how did he say he caused the black eye?
I bashed her around the fucking house.
Was there anybody else in the kitchen when Adam said this to you?
Just the three of us.
Just you, Adam, and Harmony?
Harmony.
A 5-year-old girl vanished for almost 2 years before anyone officially started looking for her. And by then, police were not searching for a missing child. They were trying to find what was left of one. In December of 2019, Harmony Montgomery was living in New Hampshire with her father, Adam Montgomery, his wife Kayla, and 2 younger children. They were homeless, they were using drugs, and according to prosecutors, they were living inside a car when Harmony had an accident she could not control. She was 5. She was scared. And what happened next would become one of the most disturbing child murder cases in recent American history. Her father did not call 911. Her stepmother did not call 911. Instead, after Harmony stopped responding, her small body was hidden, moved, frozen, concealed, and eventually disposed of in a location that still has not been found. Stay with me, because this case is not only about one man's violence. It is about a child who passed through multiple systems, a custody decision that still haunts everyone who has studied it, a mother who tried to find her daughter but kept being sent from one place to another, a stepmother whose testimony became the center of the murder trial, and a father who, even after being convicted, still refused to say where Harmony is. This is the story of Harmony Montgomery. Not just the child in the headline, not just the missing girl whose face was shown on posters. The little girl, the daughter, the sister, the child who should have been protected long before the world learned her name. Harmony Renee Montgomery was born on June 7th, 2014. From the very beginning, her life was fragile. Her biological mother, Crystal Sorry, struggled with substance abuse. Her father, Adam Montgomery, was incarcerated when she was born. And within the first months of her life, child welfare agencies were already involved. Harmony spent much of her early childhood in foster care. Not once, not briefly, repeatedly. She moved between family instability and temporary safety, never staying long enough in the kind of secure, permanent home every child deserves. People who knew her described her as sweet, affectionate, social, bright, and full of personality. She was partially blind in one eye and wore glasses, but people close to her said she adapted with the resilience of a child who did not yet understand how much the adults around her were failing her. She was the kind of little girl who wanted to talk to people, the kind who made friends easily, the kind who, even after instability, still wanted to love and be loved. And that is what makes the next part so hard to understand. Because in February of 2019, a Massachusetts court awarded Adam Montgomery custody of Harmony. At that point, Adam had a violent criminal history. He had spent much of Harmony's early life away from her. He had not been a consistent parent. And yet, the decision was made. Harmony was sent from Massachusetts to New Hampshire to live with him. That custody decision later became one of the most heavily criticized points in the entire case. Reports and later commentary on child welfare failures pointed to a breakdown between agencies, courts, and states, a system that should have been built to center the child, but instead left Harmony vulnerable. For Crystal Sorry, losing custody did not mean she stopped loving Harmony. She would later say that after Adam gained power over the situation, he blocked access, cut off communication, and made it almost impossible for her to know what was happening with her daughter. And for a while she hoped Adam was simply being cruel, that maybe he was keeping Harmony from her, that maybe the child was alive somewhere, unreachable but safe. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Something was very wrong. When Harmony arrived in New Hampshire, she was living with Adam, his wife, Kayla Montgomery, and the couple's younger children. At first, from the outside, it may have looked like a father finally stepping into the role he had missed. But inside that home, according to later testimony, things were already dark. Adam and Kayla struggled with drug use. There were housing problems. There were calls to authorities. There were signs of chaos. And then, in July of 2019, one of the clearest warnings appeared. Adam's uncle, Kevin Montgomery, saw Harmony with a black eye. Not a small mark, not a vague bruise. He later described it as a full black eye, dark around the eye, the kind of injury that immediately raises alarm. When Kevin asked what happened, Adam allegedly answered before Harmony could say anything. He said he had thrown her around the house. According to the trial testimony summarized in the transcriptions, Adam claimed he did it after leaving Harmony to watch a baby while he was in the bathroom. The baby cried, and Adam said Harmony had put her hand over the baby's mouth. Kevin reported the incident to Child Protective Authorities. That should have been the moment everything changed. A known violent man, a young child, a visible injury, a direct statement from a relative saying Adam admitted causing it. But that was not the moment Harmony was rescued. Child welfare workers did visit. They eventually saw Harmony. Adam gave another explanation for the injury. The family remained under concern, but the case did not produce the intervention that might have saved her. Later, in January of 2020, when authorities asked Adam about Harmony, he said she was back with her mother, Crystal. A worker reportedly tried to confirm that with Crystal and left a voicemail. But that was it. There was no immediate discovery that Harmony was not with Crystal, no emergency escalation, no child located, no verification that she was alive. and by that point, according to prosecutors, Harmony had already been dead for weeks. This is one of the most unbearable parts of the case. The system asked where Harmony was. Adam gave an answer. That answer was not verified with the urgency the situation demanded, and a dead child remained hidden in the silence between agencies, assumptions, and delayed follow-up. By late 2019, Adam and Kayla's living situation had collapsed. The family lost housing. For a period of time, they were living in a car. Harmony, who had once been toilet-trained, began having bathroom accidents during that period. Think about what that means. A 5-year-old child, homeless, living in a vehicle, surrounded by adults using drugs, under stress, frightened, and then punished for the physical effects of that fear. According to prosecutors and Kayla Montgomery's later testimony, Adam repeatedly hit Harmony when she had accidents. That pattern led to December 7th, 2019, the day the prosecution said he killed her. That morning, the family was in the car. Adam and Kayla had gone to a methadone clinic. At some point, Adam smelled urine and became angry with Harmony. According to Kayla, he struck her. Then the family began driving toward Burger King. Harmony was in the back seat. She was crying. And Adam, while driving, reached back and punched her repeatedly in the head and face. Kayla testified that this happened multiple times, including while the vehicle stopped at red lights. She said she tried once to raise her arm and stop him, but he looked at her in a way that made her afraid he would turn on her too. So she stopped. She did not call for help. She did not get Harmony out. She did not stop the car. She sat there, and Harmony absorbed the violence. According to Kayla, after repeated blows, Adam said something that showed he knew this time was different. He said he thought he had really hurt her. But he still did not call an ambulance. He did not drive to a hospital. He did not stop everything and try to save his daughter. Instead, according to testimony, he covered Harmony with a blanket and continued on to get food. That is the moment this case becomes almost impossible to process, because there are crimes of rage, there are crimes of panic, and then there are the decisions that come afterward, the decisions that reveal what a person values. Harmony was under a blanket, possibly dying, possibly already beyond help. And the adults in the car continued moving through the day. After Burger King, they went to a parking area. They used drugs. Harmony was still in the car, still under the blanket, still not being helped. Eventually, the car broke down. That is when Adam tried to wake her. She did not respond. There was no pretending anymore. Harmony was dead. But even then, no one called 911. Instead, Adam went to the trunk, took out a duffel bag, and placed Harmony's body inside. Kayla later testified that he folded the child's small body into the bag. That image became one of the central horrors of the trial. Not because the jury needed shock, but because it showed what happened after death. And what happened after death became a crime of its own. Adam and Kayla did not report Harmony dead. They did not tell her mother. They did not tell police. They did not tell anyone who had loved her or looked for her. They created a lie. Harmony had gone back to Crystal. Harmony was living with her mother. Harmony was somewhere else. That was the story. And for almost 2 years, that story held. But the body had to be hidden. At first, according to testimony, Adam kept Harmony's body in the duffel bag. The bag was placed outside in cold weather. Then it was moved into a trunk, then to a porch, then into a cooler. Then, when the family moved into a shelter, the body was hidden in the ceiling area above the room. Later, investigators found biological evidence in locations connected to where the body had allegedly been hidden. One report from the appeal hearing described prosecutors introducing evidence that corroborated Kayla's testimony. Harmony's body had been hidden in the ceiling at a families in transition shelter, stored in a freezer at Adam's workplace. Quicklime had been purchased, and a U-Haul had been rented before the remains were taken away and never recovered. For months, Harmony was not buried, not mourned, not returned to her family. She was carried from place to place as evidence to be managed. Adam got a job at a restaurant. According to the state's theory, he used cold storage to manage the decomposition. At another point, after the family moved into an apartment, he took Harmony's remains into a bathroom. The trial testimony surrounding that period was some of the most graphic and disturbing in the case. For the purposes of this script, we do not need to repeat every detail. What matters is this. The state argued that Adam attempted to manipulate, compress, conceal, chemically treat, and ultimately dispose of Harmony's remains so completely that she would never be found, and to this day, she has not been. In March of 2020, Adam rented a U-Haul. Investigators later tracked the movement of that truck and developed evidence suggesting he drove toward Massachusetts. Some reporting and court summaries have pointed to the Revere, Massachusetts area as a likely location connected to the disposal of Harmony's remains. But no body has ever been recovered. That absence became the open wound of the entire case. A jury could convict, a judge could sentence, a civil court could award damages. But Harmony's mother still could not bring her daughter home. And while all of this was hidden, the lie continued. When people asked where Harmony was, Adam said she was with Crystal. When Crystal asked, she was blocked, ignored, redirected. When agencies should have verified, they did not do enough fast enough. Then, in late 2021, the silence finally cracked. Crystal Sorey had been trying to find Harmony. Former foster family members and others wanted to reconnect with her. People began asking questions that could no longer be brushed aside. Where was Harmony? Where had she been living? When was the last time anyone outside Adam and Kayla's circle had seen her? The answer was devastating. No one had seen her in roughly 2 years. When the Manchester Police Department finally became aware, the investigation began as a missing child case that was already cold from the first day. Police were not looking for a child who had vanished yesterday. They were trying to reconstruct 2 missing years. 2 years of lies. 2 years of systems failing to connect the same obvious question: where is Harmony? On New Year's Eve of 2021, police located Adam Montgomery in a vehicle with his girlfriend at the time, Kelsey Small. The interrogation and body camera exchanges became deeply revealing. Officers asked one simple question in different ways: where is Harmony? Adam refused to give a clear answer. He said he had nothing to say. He said he knew she was alive. He said she was fine. Then he said she should be with Crystal. But when detectives pressed him, the story began shifting. If he had not seen Harmony in 2 years, how could he know she was alive? If she was with Crystal, why was Crystal desperately trying to find her? If he was her father and had legal custody, why was he not the one demanding answers? Detectives noticed what anyone watching those exchanges could feel. There was no urgency from Adam, no panic, no father desperate to locate a missing daughter, just evasion, deflection, and a refusal to help. A few days later, on January 4th, 2022, Adam was arrested on charges connected to the earlier assault of Harmony, interference with custody, and endangering the welfare of a child. At that point, he was not yet charged with murder. There was no body, there was no full account of what had happened, but investigators were now moving. The case gained national attention. Rewards grew. Searches were conducted. Authorities looked through homes, yards, records, statements, phone data, and anything that could help reconstruct the missing years. Kayla Montgomery was also investigated. At first, she repeated the lie. She said Adam had taken Harmony to Crystal. She said she was not there for certain parts of the timeline. But her story did not survive contact with records. Work records contradicted her account. Investigators discovered that she had continued receiving benefits connected to Harmony even after Harmony was no longer alive. Kayla was eventually charged with perjury. And once she faced legal consequences of her own, she began cooperating. That cooperation became the key that unlocked the prosecution's case. It also became the defense's strongest target, because Kayla had lied, repeatedly, to police, to a grand jury, for months. So the question became, could the jury believe her now? The prosecution's answer was yes. Not because Kayla was morally clean, but because, in their view, her most important claims were corroborated. The ceiling, the cooler, the U-Haul, the lime, the freezer, the DNA and biological evidence, the movement of the body, the physical locations that matched her story. The state argued that Kayla's testimony did not stand alone. It was supported by evidence Adam could not explain away. By August of 2022, authorities publicly announced that Harmony's disappearance was being treated as a homicide. In October of 2022, Adam Montgomery was formally charged with second-degree murder, falsifying physical evidence, abuse of a corpse, witness tampering, and assault. Prosecutors alleged he killed Harmony around December 7, 2019, by repeatedly striking her in the head with his fist. Adam denied killing her. Before trial, he was already convicted in an unrelated firearms case and sentenced to decades in prison. But the murder trial was still coming. And when it began in February of 2024, it became one of the most closely watched trials in New Hampshire. Adam attended jury selection. Then he chose not to attend much of the trial in person. At the start, he pleaded guilty to 2 charges: falsifying physical evidence and abuse of a corpse. That meant he admitted to acts connected to concealing and mistreating Harmony's remains. But he still denied killing her. His defense strategy was clear: blame Kayla. The defense argued that Kayla was the last person who truly knew what happened to Harmony, and that she had every reason to blame Adam to protect herself. They said Adam participated in the cover-up, but they argued the state could not prove he was the one who killed Harmony. That was the defense's central gamble. Admit the unspeakable parts that could no longer be denied. Deny the murder. Shift the final violence onto the witness whose credibility was already damaged. But the prosecution framed the case differently. They told the jury this was not simply about one moment inside a car. It was about Adam's actions before, during, and after Harmony's death. Before, the black eye, the abuse, the threats, the control. During, the repeated punches while driving to Burger King. After, the concealment, the lies, the intimidation of Kayla, and the months-long handling of Harmony's remains. The state told jurors that Adam's conduct formed one continuous story of violence, indifference, and cover-up. Kayla's testimony was central. She described the car ride. She described Harmony crying. She described Adam punching her. She described the moment Harmony stopped responding. She described the duffel bag. She described the hiding places. She described the ceiling, the cooler, the freezer, the bathroom, the lime, the U-Haul, and the defense cross-examined her intensely. They reminded the jury that she had lied before. They questioned her motives. They suggested she changed her story only after she needed a deal. They tried to show that her version was self-serving. And that is a fair legal point. A witness who lies under oath creates a credibility problem. But credibility is not judged in a vacuum. The prosecution argued that if Kayla was inventing the entire story, then it was an extraordinary coincidence that physical evidence and location evidence lined up with so much of what she described. That became the jury's task. Not to decide whether Kayla was a good person, not to decide whether she should have done more, but to decide whether Adam Montgomery murdered Harmony. On February 22, 2024, the jury returned a verdict: guilty, second-degree murder, guilty of other related charges. A New Hampshire jury convicted Adam Montgomery in the killing of his daughter, whose body still had not been found. It was a legal answer, but not a complete answer, because Harmony was still missing. On March 12, 2024, Harmony was declared legally dead, allowing Crystal Sorey to pursue legal actions connected to her daughter's death. Then came sentencing. On May 9, 2024, Adam Montgomery was sentenced. For the murder conviction, he received 45 years to life. Across the murder and related charges, the aggregate minimum was 56 years. That sentence was also added to a prior sentence of at least 32.5 years for unrelated gun convictions, making it effectively a life sentence. At sentencing, prosecutors offered him a chance. If he revealed where Harmony's remains were, they would recommend reducing part of the sentence. Adam said nothing. He did not give Crystal a place to mourn. He did not give his daughter a burial. He did not tell the court where he had taken her. The judge and family members spoke of Harmony as a child who had been denied everything she deserved. Crystal Sorey addressed the court with the grief of a mother who had spent years trying to get people to listen. People who knew Harmony described a happy, kind child. Not a case, not evidence. A child. Kayla Montgomery, who had pleaded guilty to perjury, was granted parole in May of 2024 after serving her sentence. Her cooperation helped prosecutors, but her role remains morally painful for many observers. She did not kill Harmony, according to the jury's verdict, but she lied, stayed silent, and participated in the concealment of the truth. And the case did not end there. Because the courtroom verdict did not erase the larger institutional failures. Harmony's life had passed through child welfare agencies, courts, foster care, parental rights proceedings, and interstate jurisdiction. In 2025, New Hampshire agreed to pay Crystal Sorey millions of dollars in a settlement related to claims that state agencies failed to protect Harmony after warning signs emerged. Reporting on the settlement noted that the state denied wrongdoing, but agreed to the payment to avoid further litigation. Then, in May of 2026, another civil development came. A judge issued a $15.5 million judgment against Adam Montgomery in a wrongful death lawsuit brought by Crystal Sorey. Judge Michael A. Klass issued the order on May 6, 2026, in Hillsborough County Superior Court Northern District. That judgment will not bring Harmony back. It will not reveal where her remains are. But it marks another formal recognition of responsibility. Another record stating that what happened to Harmony was not simply tragic. It was wrongful. It was preventable. It was the result of choices. Adam Montgomery also pursued an appeal of his murder conviction. In October 2025, the New Hampshire Supreme Court heard arguments in which his legal team claimed the trial was unfair because the jury heard evidence about prior assaults and because the assault and murder charges were tried together. The state argued that the evidence was part of the full story and that much of Kayla's testimony was corroborated by physical evidence. As of the latest reliable reporting I found, the conviction remained in place while the appeal process was being weighed. So where does that leave the case now? Adam Montgomery is in prison. Kayla Montgomery has served time for perjury. Crystal Sorey has received civil judgments and settlements related to her daughter's death and the failures around it. But Harmony is still not home. Her body has never been recovered. That is the final cruelty. Because even after all the testimony, all the evidence, all the verdicts, and all the sentencing, the one thing her mother still wants most has not been given: a place, a burial, a goodbye. Harmony. Montgomery was 5 years old. She was born into instability, but instability did not have to become death. She entered foster care, but foster care did not have to become a revolving door. She was sent to her father, but that decision did not have to become a death sentence. People saw signs: a black eye, a violent statement, a family avoiding contact, a child suddenly gone from view. And still, she disappeared inside a silence that lasted almost 2 years. That silence is what makes this case so haunting. Because Harmony did not vanish in one moment. She was allowed to become invisible gradually, first to systems, then to agencies, then to the people who should have demanded proof that she was alive, then finally to the world. Until her mother refused to stop asking. Until police finally asked the question that should have been answered long before: where is Harmony? And now, years later, that question remains. Where is Harmony? Not legally. The court answered who killed her. Not civilly. The courts have assigned financial responsibility. But physically, humanly. Where is the child whose life was reduced to a lie told by the people who should have protected her? Where is the little girl with the glasses? The little girl people remembered as sweet, talkative, funny, and loving? Where is the child who should have been in school, making friends, learning, growing, and becoming someone? That is why this case still matters. Not because Adam Montgomery deserves more attention. He does not. Not because the details are shocking. They are. But because Harmony represents every child who can be known to a system and still not be protected by it. Every child whose bruises are explained away. Every child whose silence is mistaken for safety. Every child whose file gets closed while danger is still standing in the room. Harmony Montgomery deserved a life. She deserved stability. She deserved adults who asked better questions and refused easy answers. She deserved to be more than the child people searched for too late. And until she is found, this story remains unfinished. A verdict can punish. A sentence can remove a dangerous man from the world. A judgment can create a legal record. But none of those things can replace what Harmony's family still does not have. Her. So the final question is simple. If a child can disappear for nearly 2 years, while multiple adults and agencies all believe someone else is responsible for checking on her, what does protection really mean? And how many chances should a system get before failure becomes part of the crime? Leave your thoughts below. And remember Harmony Montgomery, not for the horror of what was done to her, but for the life she should have had. Because she was not invisible. She was made invisible. And now the world has a responsibility to keep saying her name. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. We truly hope this story mattered to you. And if you'd like to support the channel and help us continue creating content, please like the video, leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Your support really makes a difference, and we genuinely appreciate every person who helps keep these stories from being forgotten.